The night my parents announced they were selling my childhood home, my mother smiled and said, "Don't worry, Claire. You'll understand when you're older." I was 29. I was old enough to understand exactly what they were doing. What I didn't understand was why they were so desperate to sell the house. 3 months later, I found out. They hadn't sold it because they couldn't afford it. They had sold it because my sister wanted a house. And my parents had decided that my childhood memories were a fair price to pay for her dream. They thought I would cry. They thought I would beg. They thought I would disappear from their lives. Instead, I bought the house back. And 6 months later, when my parents unknowingly signed a lease for the very house they had sold, I became their landlord. But that wasn't even the biggest surprise waiting for them. The biggest surprise was hidden inside a document my grandfather had left behind. And when my father finally read it, his face turned completely white. My name is Claire. I grew up in a 3-bedroom house at the end of a quiet suburban street. It wasn't beautiful by normal standards. The kitchen cabinets were old. The basement flooded whenever there was heavy rain. The driveway had cracks running through it. But my grandfather had built half the house himself. He had installed the wooden staircase. He planted the maple tree in the front yard. And he built a bookshelf in my bedroom because, according to him, a girl who loves books deserves a wall big enough for them. That bookshelf became my favorite thing in the house. I spent my childhood sitting beside it, reading until my mother yelled that it was bedtime. My younger sister, Emily, never cared about the house. She cared about what the house could give her. Even as children, the difference between us was obvious. If I got an A on my report card, my parents said, "Good." If Emily got a B, they ordered pizza and celebrated. When I won a school writing competition, my father forgot to show up. When Emily performed in a school talent show, my mother took the entire afternoon off work. I learned something early. Emily didn't have to earn love. She simply received it. I had to prove I deserved it. So I became independent. At 18, I left for college. I worked 2 jobs. I graduated with debt. Then I built a career in technology. I wasn't rich. Not yet. But I was doing well. Emily, meanwhile, changed jobs every few months and constantly needed money. My parents always called me when she needed help. "Claire, can you cover her rent?" "Claire, Emily's car broke down." "Claire, your sister has an opportunity. She just needs a little support." A little support became thousands of dollars. Eventually, I stopped giving. That was when my family decided I had changed. Everything exploded after my grandfather died. 3 days after his funeral, my father called me into the living room. "We need to talk about the house." I immediately knew something was wrong. "What about it?" He looked at my mother. Then he said, "We're selling." I stared at him. "You're what?" "Selling the house." "No." My father frowned. "Excuse me? You can't sell Grandpa's house." He laughed. "It's our house." I looked at my mother. "Mom?" She avoided my eyes. "Your father is right." I felt something inside me crack. "You promised Grandpa you wouldn't sell it." My father stood up. "Your grandfather isn't here anymore." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Then my sister walked into the room. She was smiling. And that's when I understood. "It's for Emily, isn't it?" Nobody answered. I looked at her. "Isn't it?" Emily crossed her arms. "I found a house." I laughed bitterly. "Of course you did." My father immediately became defensive. "Emily needs a fresh start." "And I don't. You already have a life." I stared at him. "So does she." My mother finally spoke. "Claire, you're being selfish." That word. Again. Selfish. Because I didn't want them to sell the one place my grandfather had left me emotionally. I grabbed my coat. Before leaving, I looked at my father. "If you sell that house, don't expect me to pretend everything is okay." He shrugged. "That's your choice." I walked out. And that was the last time I entered my childhood home as a daughter. 2 weeks later, they sold it. I didn't attend the closing. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't even drive past the house. For almost a year, I tried to forget it existed. Then my business changed everything. I had started a small consulting company on the side. One client became 3. 3 became 10. 10 became a full-time business. By the following year, I had more money than I had ever imagined. That's when I started investing. One evening, I was looking through local property listings when I saw something familiar. The address stopped me cold. My childhood home. The new owner had listed it for sale. I stared at the screen. The house had been renovated. New roof. New kitchen. Fresh paint. But the maple tree was still there. So was the old garage. And somewhere inside that house was my grandfather's bookshelf. I closed the laptop, then opened it again. I called the realtor. Is the property still available? Yes. Who owns it? A private investment company. I made an offer. They rejected it. I made another. Rejected. Then I made one they couldn't refuse. 3 weeks later, I signed the paperwork. The house was mine. Again. But this time, my name was on the deed. I walked into the empty living room. I stood there for almost 5 minutes. Then I went upstairs. My old bedroom was still there. The walls were different. But the bookshelf was gone. I searched everywhere. Finally, I found it in the basement. Broken. Covered in dust. One of the shelves was hanging loose. I sat on the floor beside it and cried. Not because I was angry. Because I realized something. My parents had sold a building. But they had never understood that to me. They had sold a piece of my childhood. I decided I wouldn't destroy the house. I would restore it. And I would never let anyone take it from me again. 6 months later, I received an email from my property manager. A family had applied to rent the house. The names were familiar. I read the email twice. Then I laughed. My parents. They had no idea. Apparently, they had sold the house, moved into a temporary apartment, and later decided they wanted to move back into the neighborhood. They found my property online. They liked the renovations. They liked the backyard. And most importantly, they liked the rent. They never asked who owned it. They signed a 1-year lease. I signed it too, as the owner. They never knew. For 6 months, I watched them live in my house. My mother planted flowers in the backyard. My father repaired the fence. Emily visited every Sunday. They had no idea that every rent payment was going into my account. I could have revealed the truth immediately, but I didn't. I wanted them to understand something. The house they had treated like an asset had become the one thing they couldn't control. Then came my father's birthday. My mother invited me to dinner. I almost declined, but I went. Emily was there. My parents were sitting at the dining table. My father raised his glass. To family. I nearly laughed. Dinner lasted 20 minutes before my father started talking about Emily. She has a business opportunity. I looked at my sister. She smiled. My father continued. She needs $100. 000. I put down my fork. No. His expression changed. You didn't even think about it. I don't need to. My mother sighed. Claire, you have the money. So? You're her sister. And she's an adult. Emily slammed her hand on the table. You've always been jealous of me. I stared at her. Jealous? Yes. Of what? She couldn't answer. I turned toward my father. Is this why you sold Grandpa's house? Silence. My mother looked down. My father finally said, we did what was best for the family. No. I shook my head. You did what was best for Emily. He stood up. Don't start this again. You sold my home. It was never yours. The words hit harder than I expected. I nodded slowly. Okay. Then I stood. I understand. My father smiled. Good. I picked up my purse. Enjoy the house. He froze. What? I smiled. Nothing. Then I left. The next morning, my property manager called. They've missed a payment. I already knew who he meant. Send the standard notice. What if they can't pay? Give them the opportunity to catch up. He paused. And if they don't? I looked at the deed sitting on my desk. Then follow the lease. They had 30 days. No special treatment. No revenge. Just the consequences of their own choices. They didn't know what was coming. 2 weeks later, my mother called. Claire, we're having trouble with the house. What kind of trouble? The landlord is asking us to leave. I pretended to sound surprised. Why? They say the owner is renovating. Oh, do you know anything about it? No. She sighed. Can you talk to the owner? I looked at the framed photograph of my grandfather on my desk. I don't think that would help. Why? Because the owner probably has a reason. She went quiet. Then she said something I never expected. I wish your father hadn't sold the house. I closed my eyes. Why? Your grandfather loved that place. So did I. I know. For the first time in years, my mother's voice sounded honest. Then she whispered, I'm sorry. I didn't answer. Because an apology after losing something isn't always the same as an apology before destroying it. The 30 days ended on a rainy Saturday morning. My parents were standing outside the house with boxes. Emily was there too. I pulled into the driveway. My father immediately recognized my car. His face hardened. What are you doing here? I got out. I own the property. He stared at me. Then he laughed. You? Yes. You don't own this house. I walked toward him. I do. My mother stepped forward. Claire? I handed my father a folder. He opened it. Inside was the deed. His eyes moved across the page, then stopped. His face changed. No. I said nothing. He looked at the second page, then the third. That's impossible. I smiled. You sold it. He stared at me. I bought it. Emily grabbed the papers. Her hands began shaking. You bought her house? I corrected her. My house. My father looked at me with pure disbelief. You planned this? No. I shook my head. You made this possible. He couldn't speak. Then my mother started crying. You've been our landlord? For 6 months. My father looked sick. Why didn't you tell us? Because I wanted you to experience something. What? What it's like when someone else has control over your home. He looked away. And for once, he had nothing to say. Then I pulled another envelope from the folder. This is for you. My father looked suspiciously at it. What is it? Open it. He did. His eyes moved across the page, then stopped. He looked at me. Where did you get this? From Grandpa's attorney. My mother stepped closer. What is it? I looked at them. It's the original trust agreement. My father's face went pale. I continued. Grandpa didn't simply leave the house to you. My father shook his head. He did. No. I handed him another page. He placed the house into a trust. Silence. You were allowed to live there. My father stared at me. But you were not allowed to sell it without the beneficiary's approval. He looked at me. Who was the beneficiary? I didn't answer. He already knew. His lips parted. Claire, yes. My grandfather had named me. The house had legally been protected for me. But there was one complication. My parents had sold it years ago before the trust paperwork had been properly transferred. That was why the new owner had been willing to negotiate. The legal dispute could have taken years. Instead, I bought the property myself. I didn't need to destroy my parents in court. I just needed to own what they had tried to take from me. My father slowly lowered the papers. Why didn't you sue us? I looked at him. Because I didn't want your money. I paused. I wanted my home. Emily started crying. You ruined everything. I looked at her. No. You're taking the house away from us. No. I pointed toward the boxes. You already gave it away. My father looked at me. I was wrong. It was the first time he'd ever said those words. I waited. He continued. I thought you would always forgive us. I nodded. That was your mistake. My mother stepped toward me. Can we stay? I looked at the house. Then at her. You have 30 days. She started crying. Please. My heart hurt. But I stayed calm. Mom, I'm not throwing you onto the street. She looked relieved. You'll have 30 days to find somewhere else. My father nodded slowly. And after that? You leave. He looked down. Then whispered, I understand. 3 weeks later, they moved out. I didn't celebrate. I didn't post about it. I didn't tell relatives. I simply changed the locks. Then I walked through every room. The house was empty again. But this time, it felt different. I went upstairs. My grandfather's bookshelf was waiting in the corner. I had repaired it months earlier. I placed it against the wall in my old bedroom. Then I put my grandfather's photograph on top. Under it, I placed the old brass key. The same key he had given me when I was 17. That night, I sat beside the window and watched the maple tree move in the wind. For years, I had thought revenge meant making my parents suffer. I finally understood that I had been wrong. The real revenge was becoming someone they could no longer control. They had wanted to make me feel powerless. Instead, they taught me independence. They had sold my childhood home. Instead, they gave me the chance to buy it back. They had chosen my sister over me. Instead, I learned to choose myself. My parents eventually moved to a smaller apartment. Emily stopped speaking to me for almost a year. My mother eventually sent a letter. It said, "I finally understand why you were hurt." I read it twice. Then I put it away. I didn't need an apology to move forward. I didn't need their approval. I didn't need revenge anymore. Because I had something much better. Peace. Today, that house is still mine. The maple tree is still standing. The basement still floods when it rains. The kitchen still has one cabinet that refuses to close properly. And the bookshelf my grandfather built is still in my bedroom. Sometimes my daughter sits beside it and reads the same books I read. When I was her age, one evening, she asked me, "Mom, why do you love this house so much?" I looked at the bookshelf, then at the photograph of my grandfather, and I smiled. Because someone I loved built it for me. She smiled. "Grandpa?" "Yes." Then she asked, "Did he know you would live here?" I looked around the room. I think he hoped I would. And maybe that's what mattered most. My parents thought they had sold a house. They thought they had erased my claim to the past. They thought money could replace memories. But they were wrong. Because some things aren't measured by their price. Some homes aren't just buildings. And some daughters don't stay broken forever. Sometimes, they come back stronger. And when they do, the people who once told them they had no right to come home discover something they never expected. The girl they pushed away owns the door.